Well, Tony and Camilla, one thing we mustn't, of course, forget is there actually is a new leader here as well. Not quite the Prime Minister, and obviously we don't have a president, but Kemi Badenoch is the new leader of the Conservative Party, and today was her first appearance at Prime Minister's Questions. Now, we are going to come back to this a bit later in the week on the Daily Tea about how her first week has gone, because I know how popular her leadership is with you. But today, actually, on her first PMQ, she was pretty smart because she actually went in on the problems that Trump's victory in America raises for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, who frankly have been pretty rude, certainly in opposition, about Donald Trump, calling him a racist, calling him a misogynist, in many, many tweets from not only David Lammy, who is, of course, now the Foreign Secretary, but Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary. And Kemi Badenoch saw an opportunity and took it pretty smartly in today's PMQs.
And so I would like to start by congratulating President-elect Trump on his impressive victory this morning. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary met him in September. Did the Foreign Secretary take that opportunity to apologise for making derogatory and scatological references, including, and I quote, "Trump is not only a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international order." And if he did not apologise, will the Prime Minister do so now on his behalf?
The Foreign Secretary and I did meet President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago for dinner for about a couple of hours, and we discussed a number of issues of global significance. It was a very constructive exercise.
Well, that's quite a nice spin, isn't it, from Keir Starmer there? But let's be honest, Trump's got a pretty good memory. He will remember how he was described by David Lammy. To be fair, Tony, do you think that actually in office he's going to have to take a slightly different approach, even if he's got personal reservations about the Labour government in Britain? He knows he has to try and nurture the special relationship come what may, right?
I think when we speak to Trump's team about this, they're realists about their relationships internationally. They don't necessarily care what your domestic policy is, what you think about things, what you've said before. Trump is a negotiator. He's a businessman. He's a man who tries to get what he can from his allies and from his enemies towards his own foreign policy goals. And so, I don't think the personal relationship between Starmer and Trump is going to be that good. I don't think it necessarily makes a difference either, though, to be honest. One thing I would note, and since Starmer mentioned it just there, that meeting that they had in New York, no photographs emerged of that meeting from either side. Normally you might expect Number 10 to put out a picture there, but we never got one. So I wonder if that's perhaps
Keir Starmer
not wanting to become a hostage for
Keir Starmer said it was so successful they were offered second portions, which apparently is very unusual when you're having dinner with Donald Trump. I don't know how true that is. I think actually, Camilla, your question to Tony about how will Donald Trump react, I think you're absolutely right, Tony. He's a negotiator. He will do what's best for the position he is taking at that time. I think it's much harder for Keir Starmer with the Labour Party here about how they respond and how the UK government responds to Trump. Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, he posted on X this morning after Donald Trump had been declared the winner. And I think what he posted is what a lot of the Labour front bench and cabinet ministers wished they could have been able to post. Although Donald Trump did incredibly well, he's won, big, lots and lots of people who would be Democrat supporters, who are Democrat supporters in America, and are certainly social democrats and left in the UK and probably the rest of Europe. This is what Ed Davey said, and I think this does reflect a point of view of Donald Trump, which Keir Starmer knows runs deep in the Labour Party. Ed Davey said, "This is a dark, dark day for people around the globe. The world's largest economy and most powerful military will be led by a dangerous, destructive demagogue. Fixing the UK's broken relationship with the EU is even more urgent than before. We must strengthen trade and defence cooperation across Europe and help protect ourselves from the damage Trump will do." He then goes on, Ed Davey, to talk about equality, democracy, human rights, climate agenda, and all these issues are where the government is. Agree or disagree with where the government is, that is where the government is. It does believe in global action on climate change. It does believe that there should be, for the UK, closer relationships with the EU. And I just wondered, for you two, what's your sense being in America? how does Europe and the UK navigate the fact that they have a different model and want different priorities?
Well, I'm intrigued as to whether Trump is going to govern as he's campaigned. Some of the rhetoric at the Pittsburgh Trump rally was along the lines of, we don't understand as Americans why we're getting involved in foreign wars, be they in Ukraine or in the Middle East. I note that one of his first announcements as the president for the second time today is Trump declaring that he will bring world peace. Quite how he does that, Tony, at this stage, as he prioritizes. I mean, will he prioritize the domestic or the foreign?
Well, he'll prioritise bringing an end, I think, to America's involvement in these foreign wars. And the one for Ukraine is particular interest to him, and him and the people around him say, look, Ukraine is really a Europe problem. That's their view.
Yeah.
It's on the frontiers of Europe. It's not on frontiers of the US. And the US's attention, according to them, should be focused more on Taiwan and the issues going on in the Pacific, where the US has is far closer and has more of an interest. So I think we will have to see Europe try and readjust to an America which is far less interested in European security and NATO. And start putting some more money into defense, frankly.
I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu is celebrating this Trump victory, isn't he? I mean, there is a suggestion that he has actually held out on any kind of ceasefire or peace deal in the Middle East because he was hoping that Trump would win the presidency and then strengthen his position massively. We also know what Trump's feelings are towards Iran and how that might change the sort of global picture. But I would imagine actually that when you've campaigned on bringing down immigration and strengthening the economy, actually his first 100 days in office will be more characterized by mass deportations, of talk about tax cuts. I mean, won't he be prioritizing sort of America first, to coin a phrase?
Well, Trump is now the president-elect, and he will be until the 20th of January when we have the inauguration. But he's already said that some of this stuff he's going to try and start doing before he gets into office, and ending the war in Ukraine is one of those things. He says he's going to do it, in the period between now and then. I think on day one, when he actually enters office, we can see him start to move very quickly. And actually, the people around him have already started drafting the kinds of executive orders that he will need to pass, and the bits of legislation he'll put before Congress to do some of the stuff that he's promised during this campaign. The deportation of 1 million migrants, I think, will be one of those things. Whether or not the number is exactly 1 million and how exactly it's going to work and whether it gets challenged is another question. But I think he'll move on that very quickly. And I think we'll see him looking at tax cuts straight away. I mean, those are the two core policy commitments that he's made during this campaign. And I think, if he's not able to cut taxes straight away because he's got to wait for a budget, he'll certainly be looking at how it's going to work and who's going to be better off.
Now, of course, the Republicans run the Senate and the House of Representatives. If Trump decides, as part of his policy towards Ukraine, that he's going to withdraw all that money, that is going to be incredibly controversial. I mean, Keir Starmer did raise that in Prime Minister's questions, that Europe does not want to see that. That would be seen by many people as emboldening Vladimir Putin, that he can act with impunity on the borders of Europe. As ever with Donald Trump, you do wonder when he gets into the actual zone of decision making, things do become less binary. As you were saying, Camilla, yes, Benjamin Netanyahu may believe this is going to be super pro-Israel. And yes, the American embassy was moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, for example. But don't forget, of course, as well, Donald Trump did the Abraham Accords with other Middle Eastern countries. He's always had a strong relation, for example, with Saudi Arabia and the whole energy issue. So when he gets to these issues in office, as we found in 2016, it often becomes much more nuanced than we may imagine, although he has lost a lot of the people who were around him 2016 to 2020, meaning that maybe he can act now in a slightly more direct way that is a slightly more Trumpian way. But I think if that is his approach to Ukraine, that is going to be a very, very significant controversy across Europe.
Also, Tony, yes, it's a huge victory for him. It's on a kind of unprecedented level to a certain extent, but that doesn't silence his critics, does it? I mean, we are talking about a president-elect who is a convicted felon. We've still got outstanding criminal and civil cases against them. What happens to those?
Well, we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. I mean, this is totally uncharted territory constitutionally. There has never been a felon or someone who's going through these kind of legal issues put into the White House. The federal charges against him, that's 2 cases. He can pardon himself over or dismiss because they're federal prosecutors. They now work for him. But there are 2 state cases. One of those is the New York case where he was sentenced to 34 counts of falsifying business documents. He's due to be sentenced in that later this month. We've got no idea what's going to happen with that sentencing at the moment. And then we've also got the second state case, the Georgia case, where he was accused of trying to interfere with the election result there in 2020. That has all been pushed back until after the election, and so we may now see some kind of legal action. But I mean, I would say constitutionally it's looking very dicey for a state judge to be hauling the president in front of the courts and potentially imprisoning him while he's in the White House. We honestly have no idea what's going to happen next, but I think it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Well, we will be covering every cough and spit on the Daily Tea as ever. Kamal, I'm going to be flying back tonight. It's been quite the eye-opening experience to be here. And I tell you what, I mean, that Trump rally in Pittsburgh really did reveal something quite crucial, I think, which has been reflected in this election result. That this characterization of a certain kind of Trump supporter is completely incorrect. And that actually, if you tell people what to think and how to think, and they don't agree with your sort of progressive status quo, then they will give you a very strong message at the ballot box. And I think we've seen the sort of uprising today of Rust Belt America. And we've asked about what Trump might mean for the world. But I think the world should take notice, because there has been a bit of a revolution in the last 24 hours. And how that is going to play out now over the next 4 years is going to be absolutely fascinating to watch.